everybody. I'm hoping that you're all here for presentation skills. Talk? Yeah. Okay. It's going to be fairly informal. Essentially, I will talk for a little bit, and then there will be an exercise at the end. So anyone who wants to practice their speaking skills, there will be an opportunity. My name's Jacqui Hogan, and I do this sort of thing quite often. Now you're probably thinking, she looks confident, she looks aware and happy to be up at the front. Well, let me tell you something. Many years ago, when I was a teenager, I was asked to take part in a debate. And I'd done all my preparation, and I was ready. The first speaker proposing the motion stood up. The opposer stood up and opposed the motion. Then it was my turn to reply. And I stood up. Yep. My mind went blank. And I couldn't think of anything to say. I sat down, I apologised, and I never spoke again in public for more than 10 years. So, who here enjoys public speaking? Not even one hand? I only get one or two hands. Well, let me tell you, you are not alone. Most people, when they stand up in front of a group, your hands go clammy. You've all had that feeling? You're starting to shake. You're probably feeling quite tense. And your voice will start to speed up, and you'll start to go higher pitched, which is a real problem if you're female, because we tend to start at a higher pitch in the first place. Don't worry, there are only two types of speakers in the world: the nervous and liars. Because it's nervous energy that actually gives you the adrenaline rush that enables you to project your voice, speak well, and ultimately, when you've had enough practice, to enjoy the experience. Now, I'm going to ask you to all stand up for a moment. And I'm going to give you a couple of exercises to help control the nerves. First of all, put your hands down by your sides. Make your back straight. Just relax your shoulders. And just raise them again and drop them. Raise them and drop them. Because one of the first things we do when we're nervous is that we start to scrunch. So dropping your shoulders and them up. And do that just before you stand up to speak. The other thing to do is to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out and a deep breath in and a deep breath out. I'll have to sit down. What this does is that it helps to calm you down. And the calmer you are when you stand at the front when you're making a presentation, the calmer and the more confident you will sound. Practically perfect presentations. Now, I've divided what I'm going to talk about this evening into three areas. The bit you do before you speak, the bit you do while you're speaking, and the bit you do afterwards. Before. Now, a lot of people, when I do this sort of talk, or this particular talk, say, oh, well, I just got given the slides at the last minute. Anyone had that experience? Yeah. You've been asked to do a sales presentation, and someone says, oh, I can't make it. Can you do it? And you think, oh, I've got 101 slides here. Oh, what do I do? One of the keys to an effective and practically perfect presentation is preparation. Now, I'm guessing you're all business studies students, those of you who are students. You've all come across Stephen Covey. Yes, and I can see Alan's nodding. If you haven't, I do recommend that you read him, because one of the things that he emphasises about being effective, and it applies to presentations, it applies to business planning applies to all sorts of things, is start with the end in mind. And what I've got here is 3 elements to that. Is what you're going to say, what message you're trying to get across. Because it's no good standing up and doing a presentation if you don't know why you're doing it. So you've got to have some purpose to doing your presentation, or your speech, or your talk. And that is, what is your message, and what kind of speech or presentation is it? Now there are 3, generally speaking, three different sorts of presentation. A presentation to inform, where you want to impart information across to your audience. An presentation to persuade. In other words, you want to do your presentation like a sales presentation to actually make them do something, to make your audience take an action at the end of your talk. And finally, a presentation or a speech to entertain. Now, if you're doing presentations in business, you're probably not going to do the last one. But certainly, when you do your presentation, the first thing you should think about is, what is my message? And what do I want my audience to do? The second thing about preparation and planning is know who your audience is. Now, I know you are largely business studies students, so I've targeted what I'm going to say accordingly. But often you'll find, especially if you're in business and doing a presentation, say to a client or a customer, is that they may be in a particular industry. They may not know your jargon. Now, if you're a technical person, and my background is technology, is that you've got to be very wary of jargon. You've got to use words that your audience will understand, will take in, and will actually add to the message that you're trying to get across. The third part is how. Now, I know a lot of business presentations these days are done on PowerPoint, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how to use PowerPoint later on when we talk about props. But don't assume that PowerPoint is the only mechanism you've got for doing a presentation. I've done this particular talk without slides. I've done it without notes. I've done it just using props. You've done it using a flip chart. So be aware of what would mean most to the particular audience that you're talking to and the particular message that you've got. Now, I'll give an example. I mentioned that I'm a technical person by background, which meant that I used to sell computers. And one of the techniques I used for selling computers was not to do a PowerPoint presentation, but to actually put the computer on the desk, take it to bits, explain the parts, put it back together, and then show it working. And that used to completely wow the audiences, because A, it was different, and B, it looked clever. Actually, it wasn't, but it looked clever. So do think about different ways to actually get your message across. Practice. In my experience, this is the bit that no one does. Now, one of the reasons that I enjoy public speaking is that I joined an organisation called Toastmasters International 8 years ago, which gives me practice in doing public speaking actually every week. That probably sounds a little bit crazy, but I enjoy doing it. But one of the things that we emphasise is the need for practice, because otherwise you just turn up, you do your presentation, you do your talk, it looks rather amateur. Because the person doesn't know their subject, they don't know their audience, and they've not looked at how they're going to look in front of the group. They've not practiced what they're going to say. They've not practiced how long it's going to take. Now, how many of you sat through a presentation that was scheduled to last 10 minutes? Took 25? You ever had that experience? Yeah. How do you feel as the audience when that happens? Bored. Insulted, actually. Because by overrunning the allocated time, by not practicing how long that speech or presentation was going to take, they've actually wasted your time, haven't they? not standing and reading the notes. Practice is recording yourself so that you know what you sound like. Practice is video recording yourself as we're doing this evening, so that you know what you look like when you're doing your presentation. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about body language because it's one of the real pitfalls. Because most people don't practice what they look like, and they find out afterwards when they do the talk that they've got some irritating habit that everyone in the audience can watch. What am I?